One of them will say, oh, I hate my body. And then you'll go all around the table and each woman will say something similar like, oh my God, I hate my thighs. Like, oh my God, I gained back the weight I lost last year, blah, 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 blah. And they bond over hating their own bodies and say nothing. It drives these women nuts because we're so socialized to hate our own bodies, just like the men are socialized to hate women and complain about them and talk shit about them. And if you refuse to participate, it's like they don't trust you.
I love that video. Go watch it. It's linked in my caption. So there's a couple things I actually want to talk about from her video. One is how we bond with other women over hating ourselves. And that comes out as fat phobia. That comes out in, just policing ourselves in every way whatsoever. And that's so important because I was talking about in the video she stitched about men bonding over hating us, right? And how a guy was trying to bond with my husband over making fun of me. And my husband's like, no, no. And so let's take that conversation farther, right? Therese was talking about this fat phobia. And it's not just that, it's in everything. And like she's talking about. So whether it's like, women get very uncomfortable. A lot of women get very uncomfortable when you refuse to participate in your own demoralization and your own self-hatred, right? And they don't trust you as much if you will not degrade yourself like you're supposed to, like a good woman, right? Like a humble woman, right? Not just in terms of like, oh, I hate my thighs or any of that internalized fat phobia stuff, right? But like if someone gives you a compliment, and I love this Titanic reference here on my shirt, by the way. Someone gives you a compliment and instead of being like, no, and you don't just bat it away, like, no, don't say something nice. Oh, look, he's like, oh God. If you actually take that compliment from a man or a woman, men hate it when we do this, right? We've talked about this. Men hate it when they're like, oh, you're so beautiful. And you're like, thanks. Or if you say, I know, like they hate that. Women hate it too. Not all women, but a lot of us who have not unpacked this internalized misogyny are like, whoa, who do you think you are actually accepting the compliment that I gave you? Right? Like it's so weird for us to just be like, we have to demoralize ourselves. I've really been working hard on this because anytime somebody says, oh, I love your sweater or your dress, you even see me do it in my comments. I get compliments on my clothes all the time and I am always the first to be like, yeah, but I got it secondhand. Now, part of that is me being very proud of myself for how I find all my clothes. I haven't bought new clothes in, I don't even know how long, 3 or 4 years. Everything I buy is used and I find it super cheap online on this Vinted whatever. And so I have a lot of cute clothes that I'm so proud of that. But part of it is like, don't you dare tell me that my clothes are good because something is bad about it. Something, right? Or if someone says, oh, I loved your show, after a show. If whenever I do comedy in New York or like someone came out, oh, I loved it, I'd be like, oh, it's not that. How dare I say like, thank you. I worked really hard on that. We're not allowed to do that. We can't just take compliments. I mean, and so when I started seeing other women end this cycle of self-abuse and self-humbling, I was like, you know what? Why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. And I wrote an article about storytelling several years ago. And one of my storytelling friends who's, a TV writer and stuff like that, she does stories on stage sometimes. And she realized that her humbling herself on stage and fat shaming herself and degrading herself as like self-deprecation humor, that she was setting example for all the women in the audience, especially younger women, that this is okay. And it's coming from a self-defensive place, right? I don't want you to tell me how ugly I am or how blah, blah, blah. Like, so I'm going to beat you to the punch and I'm going to make the joke first so that you can't harm me, right? Like, I know where that's coming from. But she realized that she was participating in her own humiliation. She was laughing at herself at her own expense, and she did not want to set that example anymore. And I was like, I didn't realize I was doing it until I interviewed her, and I was like, oh my God. Now, making fun of yourself, it can be fun. And I think that's the only reason why I ever like it when men do that kind of self-deprecating humor because I'm like, oh, cool, he at least realizes that blah, blah, blah. But, we don't need to do that to ourselves. They're already doing it, right? And it's not cool to be like, hey, I'm in on the joke. I know you're probably thinking that I look stupid and blah, right? Like, because a lot of times they're not thinking that. So there's that, okay? There's this way. Stop batting away nice things that people say to you. Just take it. It makes people very uncomfortable. Good. A lot of things that make us very comfortable are not healthy, right? I actually start realizing that the things that make me the least comfortable are the things that is a signal that I'm doing something right. Because I have been walking on my hands my whole life and the whole world's upside down, right? So when I do things that are actually really healthy and really good for me, it's so uncomfortable. It's more comfortable now, but in the beginning I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. Good. That's how you break the cycle of violence in the world and in yourself. And in your family and all that stuff. If it doesn't feel natural and good and comfortable and you come from like a self-hating or abusive background, good. Discomfort is good in that regard. Not always. Don't take everything says literally. But then what Therese was also talking about, and one of my mutuals made a great comment. I'm going to post it here. So this is my mutual, and I love her content. It's so empowering. I have learned so much from her, and this comment right here is gold. Because in Theresa's video, she says, the amount of women on this app who get angry because we won't let them vent about their man in peace is also telling. They want commiseration. So and Theresa was talking about how, when those of us who push back against the normalization of a woman's own abuse, it makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that we're not allowed to talk about things and process things and a lot of times I talk about things with my friends, sometimes about my husband, because I want to know, is this me? Am I doing something? Or I'll talk about my therapist or my mentor, somebody who can help me see, is this like an actual problem, or is this Melanie projecting all of her dad issues and all of her domestic violence stuff from that relationship onto an innocent person in my home? And a lot of times it's the latter. Literally this morning, I did it. And it's terrifying when I realize that I am being so cruel to a man who did nothing wrong because of something from my past. So I have to keep myself in check. That is one reason why I talk to other people. I learn in community, but I have trusted people in my community who are have healthy relationships that I can learn from, who can help me see what I'm doing wrong and when I need to speak and when I need to take this on an internal thing, right? But what Therese was talking about, she gave an example of like, if you just dare to be like, if a woman's just like, yeah, and he makes me do this and this and this and this and this. And you're just like, why? Why are you making his sandwich in the middle of the night? Does he ever make you a sandwich? If you just push back a little bit instead of being like, yeah, men really suck, right? A lot of women don't like that because we're not co-signing the lie that you tell yourself that this is okay. Right? Now, again, there's a way to do this that is helpful, and then there's a way that's like shamey and all that stuff, right? But for instance, my best friend Liz, who I talk about on here a lot, this before I even I didn't even know anything about dating or marriage, but she knew that I would give her the truth about herself when it came to a lot of situations. So she would call me if she had an issue with her husband that she wanted to discuss and see if it was her or if it was him. And so she would call me up and she was like, I know that you're not just going to say, yeah, what an a-hole. I know you're not going to do that. I know that you're going to look at it objectively and my history, our history, his history, and you're going to see where I'm lying to myself or where, this is valid. This is something that y'all definitely that's BS. Y'all need to talk about it. And I felt so honored that she saw me as a truth teller, as someone who's not just going to be like, yeah, screw him, Also knows that I'm the person if that sometimes, whether it with her boss, if she's not angry enough, I'll be like, what, screw that, screw them, right? Like, find the people who put a microphone to your intuition, not to your inner tyrant, not to your trauma responses. not to your internalized misogynist or your self-hatred, but to that intuitive voice that wants the best for you. Life-changing.